I'm here.
All right.
Sorry, I'm here. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
We have one question that, Jill, do you want to repeat that?
I'm so sorry. I'm here and I'm ready. Okay.
Okay, third time will be the charm.
Third time is a charm for sure. Oh,
Councilmember Kearney, this is Jill Bowman with Moms Demand Action.
yes.
I have a question about that Avondale fence.
Yes.
Prior to COVID, P&G and Children's Hospital were working on a big project in Avondale. And I don't know where it was, but it was a ball field, I believe, that they were going to do a lot of improvements and they were going to have a big opening of it. Well, COVID kind of kicked that in the head. But I'm wondering if they would partner with the Avondale fence.
That's a great idea. Are you talking about Blair Field, the field on Blair Avenue?
It might have been. I know I saw a presentation at the community council member meeting by P&G and Children's, and it looked phenomenal. But if they're into that,
that's a great idea.
Maybe they would be into the fence.
That is such a great idea. I'll check with that. That is such a great idea. We, yesterday, it was, all this just happened yesterday. And my staff today, we just haven't had a chance to really regroup, but we said everything that wasn't funded, let's see if we can find some alternative funding sources. So that would be wonderful. Because I think it's a really good project, and it's, I know it, I mean, it's only 40,000. Like, wow, we gave away millions. This seems like just a small amount to ask for something that I think would really have a difference. And because gun violence was just so bad, in lots of places, well, whenever you have unemployment that goes up, gun violence goes up. And so, we're also starting to get like this gang, it's something called Gang 84, which seems to be coming back to Avondale. So it was there in the 80s, obviously, that's why it's called Gang 84. But we're trying to prevent our young people from going that route. And the problem was we had, not just violence in Avondale, but in the business district. And that's how we ended up starting the safety group with the Uptown Consortium. Because they said people are getting killed right in our business district, we've got to do something about it. So. Hey, Alice, you all can just unmute and talk if that's okay with Bill.
Okay, so when someone was talking to us about the budget, a lot of the money comes from tax earnings on workers that work in the city. And now, of course, they're remote. So number one, what's going to happen with that? And then number two, how much of this money that you're getting will cover, will kind of solve these budget problems for a year, but not after that?
Right. So actually what we did do with the American Rescue Plan Act money is we filled in the holes for the upcoming budget. So we have a fully funded budget. Well, let me start with your first question. The income tax issue is a huge problem. And there are some lawsuits about it. We're supposed to get an update next week on where we are. And just in case anyone's wondering what we're talking about, it's because, people who live outside of the city work in the city, but now they're working from home, have said, why are we paying Cincinnati income taxes? We're living in, wherever, Indian Hill. We're not living in Cincinnati or working in Cincinnati. Why are we paying income taxes in Cincinnati? And these lawsuits are going on in several counties. Franklin County had one. I'm sure they're probably going on all over the country. So we are supposed to get an update on what's happening in Hamilton County. So we're hopeful that it's going to be in our favor, but we don't know yet. But meanwhile, we did plug in all the holes in the budget for 2022. So we have a fully funded budget, which is great. We're starting out fully funded. We also put some aside for 2023. And then we have to see going forward where we are. So that, the good thing is that for now, our budgets are fine. But, to answer your question going forward, I don't know. I mean, if income taxes are down, if it turns out, we're going to end up losing a lot, then, we'll have to look and see see what we do, but let's hope that's not the case. And I can, do you want me to kind of go through it? I'd like
You
to
had
go
some other
through-
things you wanted to go through, didn't
I
you?
want to go through the budget timeline with
Yeah.
you.
Why don't you do that?
Yeah, and I just took that off. So let me pull that up. 1 second, I took that off okay.
I have another related question,
Sure.
if I may, and that is about the budget process
Okay.
in general, because we had this extra federal money, then we have the regular city budget, and I think Dave Mann was chairing his own budget, hearings about how to spend the federal money, and the mayor got out in front and had his list, and you and
Greg Land.
Greg, did your thing. And we didn't even have the federal guidelines before people were already deciding how to spend it. So I just wanted to ask you about process.
Yeah,
whole process.
The process wasn't the greatest. I have to say, it was nice to have the money. It would have been good if we had had the federal guidelines in advance. When we first heard we were getting this money, we didn't really have any guidelines. We just knew it was money coming because of the pandemic. And so our assumption was, anything that helps us through the pandemic will be good. It turns out it couldn't be used for a lot of capital projects. And so, when we did our town halls, I can tell you some of the things that were really popular asked. One was street calming. Pedestrian deaths actually are up, and a lot of neighborhoods all over the city are complaining about speeding on their streets, and they wanted street calming measures. And we have a plan, Vision Zero, that hadn't been funded. And my understanding is it would take about $2 million to actually finish that funding, to finish those projects. And Vision Zero was about, zero pedestrian deaths. And so it's the city street calming plan. We had to take that out because once we did get the guidelines, we found out, street calming didn't work for that. And then there were some other capital projects in there that were also taken out, and all of those now have been moved over to the capital budget. So it was difficult to get the guidelines after we had already gotten requests for different projects. So that was kind of a backwards thing. Some people said we should have waited to ask what people wanted after we had the guidelines, but I'm telling you, the guidelines were so slow in coming. I mean, we found out the money was coming about a month before the guidelines. Another thing is, which would have helped, was to know how much we actually had to spend. And that's something we could have done differently. We could have actually plugged in our budget holes and then said, here's what's left to spend. So that was our mistake really with that one. We can't blame the feds. That was us all the way. Getting excited and getting out there, because we ended up, I think the discretionary money was something like 29 million, which is a far cry from 291 million. Also, initially, we didn't know they were coming in like two separate buckets. Like we would get half this year and then half next year. The good news is, though, we still have money coming next year, and the budget's been plugged for next year. So we'll have more discretionary money to spend in 2022 for the 2023 budget. So that'll be good. It's not all bad news. It's kind of a nice problem to have, but it did make it really difficult this year when we went from this huge amount to, I said breadcrumbs, and then someone corrected me and said, I don't think $30 million is really breadcrumbs. I'm like, well, it seems like breadcrumbs when we started with like 291 million, thinking we're going to really do all these great projects. And then we came down with so little. But I really think in the end, a lot of things being funded are really positive projects and things that'll help us a lot. And as I said, the things that couldn't get funded, we're still working on. So let me tell you a little bit about, I just want to go through the timeline for the upcoming budget. So the city manager is supposed to have her recommended biennial budget to the mayor on Tuesday, which is May 25th. And my understanding from yesterday is that the mayor doesn't have any changes to it. Usually the mayor, as you know, gets 2 weeks to make changes, and then it comes to city council. But we were told he's not going to have any changes. And so we should get it right away, which is good because that gives us a month to actually go through it. Let's see if I have anything. Public hearings are scheduled for June 3rd, June 8th, and June 9th. And they will be in city council chambers in person and also via Zoom. We still have COVID restrictions on, and I don't know how long those will last, but we still have those on for city council chambers. So only 20 can be in the chambers at once. But what we've asked people to do when we have a lot of folks is, come in, say your piece, and instead of having a seat, like one whole group leaves after everybody in that group speaks. This is what we did last year. And then the next group would come in, plus we have people on Zoom. So, definitely get the word out June 3rd, June 8th, and June 9th. People will be able to come in and make comment, because city council doesn't really, and this is a process people didn't understand last year. A lot of people were fussing at us about the funding, fussing at city council. And I wanted to say, we haven't even decided yet. That's why you guys are here. So, so that's the public comment is really very, very important. It's important to hear, what people have to say, what they want. And I think with the American Rescue Plan Act, the community engagement was probably better than it's been for other events in the past. I don't know how people felt about it, but I think everybody was really reaching out to the community to see what people want. Does anyone have any comments about that? I should have asked about that, because we want to make sure community engagement is, really robust. I don't know, Beth, Alice, whether or not you guys had any feedback on that process. No one said good or bad. Okay, well, all right, we'll see. But anyway, so June 3rd, June 8th, and then we Budget and Finance Committee meeting with the recommended budget is scheduled for June 21st. By state law, we have to have our budget passed, balanced and all that by June 30th. Last year we passed it, I think it was June 23rd. So we try to get a week ahead just in case anything goes wrong. It gives us time so that we're not out of step. The budget is about $1.3 billion, billion with a B as in boy. So it's a lot. And that's kind of, where we are with that.
Questions about the budget process?
Questions about anything that's, anything happening in council?
One question that I have, Christchurch Cathedral has been very close to the Peasley Neighborhood Center, and they've been doing an active job in terms of organizing around development. And I think a lot of neighborhoods are concerned that development sometimes doesn't really impact in a very good way the people that already live there. For instance, Over the Rhine was really gentrified, and a lot of affordable housing was lost there, even though $1 billion was invested there. So Peasley has been trying to set up what they call a rubric that would look at developments coming in there to grade what kind of impact it would have on the neighborhood. Now, I know Greg Landsman took that up, but I'm not sure where that went. Can you reflect on that?
Yeah, so Peasley has a really great scorecard, and what they're doing, my understanding, is taking it to different community councils and training community councils about how to use it. They wanted the city to take it up. Greg's scorecard, I think he ended up changing the name. We changed the name so many times. It's called something else, not to be confused with the Peasley rubric scorecard. But he has guidelines, and they were really just a start. And so I think they were a good start. You know, a lot of community members were asking us not to pass it because they didn't think it was really robust enough. It wasn't a scorecard. It wasn't exactly what Peasley wanted. It was kind of a maybe watered down version. But what I tried to explain is that it's really just the start and that we have to keep adding to it. I mean, the problem is that, you know, developers come in with these projects and they start working with our Department of Community and Economic Development years before we even know anything exists. And so then it goes, you know, they do a lot of negotiating. Then they go to the community councils to get permission for the TIP dollars. They go to the planning commission, you know, tax abatement and all that. And then it comes to city council and we just have a small window to actually decide on it. And so what we sit there and we say, this is what happened with the Liberty and Elm project, for example. We're like, wow, you're bringing in, you know, you're doing 300 units of housing. You know, how much of that is for affordable housing? How, you know, when we say affordable, we were talking maybe 30 to 60% AMI. Some would say 80% AMI, which is more like workforce housing. And it depends on, you know, how you define it. But really there was none. And so we said, wow, this is just a huge project to bring in and not have anything that's affordable housing. Of course, we were supposed to vote that same week and that timeline is just too small. And then because of all the, you know, quote unquote, accusations about corruption, council people really don't want to have a lot of meetings with developers behind closed doors to ask them what are they doing. I mean, they sometimes present things to us, but we prefer for them to present it in an open forum, you know, out of the sunshine, as they say, where everybody can ask questions. And so the process doesn't allow that because it's just too quick. But with the rubric / scorecard, at least it has our expectations on there. So as developers start meeting with our Department of Community and Economic Development, they can say, you know, City Council wants to know, you know, have you included affordable housing? City Council is going to ask you about community engagement. Are you meeting with the residents of the community, the councils and the other stakeholders in the community? What are they saying? Are you bringing any extra benefits? For example, are you creating any jobs in the community? Are you hiring people who actually live there? You know, what extra benefits are you bringing to the community? And so it gives us a nice list of things that we normally ask that really hadn't been asked before. What my office is working on now to add to that is to say, you know, we need some incentives, for example, and, you know, Columbus has a program that we're really modeling for this, that if you want, you know, a 15-year tax abatement, then, you know, you're including this, you know, this percentage of affordable housing in your project. Or if you want density wave so that you want to add some more units to make it more profitable for you, it's because you've included so much affordable housing. And also we can expedite the process. And so that's, you know, which, I mean, it's a long process getting permits and all that. So things that provide an incentive for including affordable housing, those are things we're trying to add and that we'll continue to add to the framework that the scorecard started. But I think the fact that different community councils have adopted Peasley's rubric is really wonderful because it means that before they give their consent, and their consent, community council's consent is very important to us. You know, does your community want this here? They will use that. They will use Peasley's rubric to decide if this is something they want. And so, you know, that's very helpful.
And so you're working on this tax abatement reform as well that Columbus has in terms of providing other.
Yeah, Columbus has a great model. So we're working on kind of a more simplified version of theirs. Theirs has a map where you divide the city into districts, like what's market ready, what's not. And we said, let's start with something a little simpler than that. But that we hope to have that in process by next week. my office's timeline was to submit something to our legal department by the end of this week. A lot of things got sidelined because of the American Rescue Plan Act, and that became kind of, all encompassing, but we do want to get this going and, during the budget process, work on that as well. So by the end of the, the summer or the current term before recess, we have something in place.
There's a question in the chat room. Steve, did you want to?
Yeah, Steve was asking how long do we have to spend the ARP money? I think it's until 2024, so it doesn't have to be spent this year. So yeah, there actually is there's a deadline for it, but we have several years.
Must be quite a few questions in terms of out there in your mind. One generic question for you is what have you found in your 1 year on council that you didn't know before? I mean, before you were an active citizen outside of council, pushing on issues and that kind of thing. What has transpired in your mind since coming on council? It's been different, and you've picked up.
It's been let me say I'm enjoying serving on city council. It can be a little rough just because a big part of politics is you form relationships and you get to know people and you start working together on something, and then because of what's happened with these indictments, some of the people I'm working with are suddenly gone, and it makes things very difficult. For example, PG Sittenfeld and Wendell Young and I, but really PG was at the forefront of this, leading the racial equity task force. And so he got that started. And then there was one meeting and then he was gone. And so we have to kind of regroup and backtrack and really get back to that. We had a lot of, really good people on it. Another thing that happened, of course, with that was the pandemic, because the chairs of this committee were and still are Dr. Melba Moore, who's our health commissioner, and Renee Mahaffey Harris with the Center for Closing the Health Gap. And both of them got really involved with the whole pandemic. And, first of all, getting people tested. And then once the vaccines came out, and that's what's going on now, getting those vaccinations out. So we kind of stepped back from that. We did some other things. For example, we have the Greater Cincinnati Foundation's All In group has training. It's called groundwater training. And so we're getting our city employees and we're encouraging our council people to sign up for that. And that's in September. So I think that will be good. There are a lot of, equity issues that, training would really help. Training and education, racial equity, LGBTQ equity. There are a lot of things that people just are not educated on that I think we could do better with. And so that's one thing we're kind of pushing for now as well. But your overall question, how are things going? Okay, I guess I kind of got off of your question. So, one thing that I came in with that I think was really important, because I asked my husband, what's the best advice you can give me about being on council? And he said, always hear all sides of an issue. And so that's been very, very helpful, to not just listen to people who think like me, but or people I'm going to agree with, but listen to all sides. So there's a dispute, for example, about a parking issue. I mean, something that seems as simple as a parking issue, but actually has a big impact if you're the person on the street who's coming home late at night and you don't have anywhere to park, and you have to park blocks and blocks away. You end up getting assaulted, for example, because you're out there walking by yourself at night. So I mean, these issues seem like small issues, but end up being really huge issues, especially if you're one of the residents. And so there was a big issue about parking between student parking and homeowner parking. And so we brought everybody to the table and we looked at all the different options and came up with, okay, here's a possible solution that actually we're now working on. And so I thought this is a great collaborative exercise. that all the sides came to the table. And so that's generally what we try to do. Like, let's hear everybody's side to see if we can come up with some, some solution that works for everyone. There's another issue. There were some businesses on Harrison, and there were food trucks for one of the breweries there. And so we want them to do well, but there was a business next door. The food trucks were actually blocking not the actual entrance, but the vision of drivers. So this person's customers couldn't get in or out on a busy street without the owner of the business standing out on the street directing traffic. And she ended up losing business, she told us, because some people said, I just can't deal with being over there coming to your business, and these food trucks are actually in the way. Well, the food trucks brought business to the brewery, so they wanted them. So we had to work something out so that there was a better location for the food trucks where they could thrive, this brewery could thrive, and they weren't blocking the business. And again, we brought them all together and said, what can we do here? And that's still in process, but we think, we found a temporary solution, and a more permanent solution is we're going to have to widen the side street because the residents aren't really happy with the food trucks being on the side street. So we still have more work to do, but just in small ways, you see that, you have to listen to everybody and bring everybody to the table. And surprisingly, when people get together and talk, they're able to actually work things out. So, that's the plus. Folks who are like mad, mad as hell, really, can come together, sit down, and we can find common ground. And so that's been very rewarding, with a lot of, putting out a lot of fires across the city and coming up with something that really works for everyone.
I would just say, I'm Karen Montagna,
Okay.
and it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Soror. Nice to see you.
Yes, Soror. It's heartening to hear the power of collaboration, or the power of people actually coming together to talk. And you learn a lot when you're talking to someone that you don't know, or an issue that you thought that you disagreed with, that there is, establishing common ground.
Right. That's absolutely true. And, because we always see things from our point of view, that when you hear someone else on the other side and they go, well, this is why this is important to me. And you go, oh, okay. So now I can see why, what I think is a solution isn't going to work for you. So let's get to, plan C. Like plan A and plan B aren't going to work, but let's find plan C. So it's been real, I have to say it's been great to see, different factions actually work together. I can tell you some things that, we're struggling with, like the Citizens Complaint Authority really needs more funding. They, and we're not even sure that a lot of people know that, this mechanism exists when people have complaints about their interactions with the police department. And so here we've got this great, and it's from the collaborative agreement, this really great mechanism to help citizens and to help the police department, come to common ground as well. But the backlog is just huge because for so many years it was underfunded. And so the cases which are supposed to be, heard within 90 days or like, a year or more past due. And so the good thing is we have a great executive director, Gabe Davis, who has stepped up. Gabe, went to Yale undergrad, Harvard Law School. His dad is a police officer here in Cincinnati. His dad might be retired. But Gabe also worked for the Department of Justice after law school, prosecuting police misconduct cases. So I thought, oh, I'm so glad they chose him because, what a good balance. You have your father who is an officer and you prosecuted officers. So you have a nice, well-balanced, I think, viewpoint. And he's been really good. He's got in there. And so what they're doing is they're triaging the cases, like the ones that have to do with use of force, they're bringing up to the front. And maybe the other ones that don't seem quite as serious, might get heard later, but they really need more funding for that. And so in this new budget cycle, that's one thing we're really going to push for because that's so important. So that's, you can see some needs that are out there. The street calming thing too, is another big one. People complain. I can't even begin to tell you how often, but it's definitely weekly that people call to complain about speeding on, Harrison Avenue, Warsaw, Reading Road, Glenway. I mean, Paddock Road, they're talking about golf cart. I live over here near Paddock, and you see these little golf carts about to cross the street from one side of the Avondale's golf club, golf area, to the other, and they have to go across the street where cars are zooming down. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. And then I was over in Price Hill, and on Warsaw, looking at the Warsaw Business District, they're going to they have some great plans to actually get that upgraded. I'm excited about that. But, we had to have an officer, Sergeant Hicks from District 2 to help us across the street. Because even though there's a street light there, cars are zooming back and forth. They're not paying any attention. And we understand somebody was actually killed near that intersection. It's just, we have to do some street calming. And so that's why we wanted to actually fund that out of those ARP dollars, but we couldn't. But again, that's in the capital budget as well.
One thing, I don't mean to ask too many questions, but here's another one. Obviously, during the pandemic, those who were struggling are struggling even more. So people who were having an affordable housing crisis anyway, that just made things worse. The food insecurity, people needing huge impact on people who are needing food. Is the city prepared to address those inequities that have even grown greater during this pandemic? And isn't this an opportune time, talking about collaboration, to do some real collaboration on these issues?
Yeah, I think there are about 12 to 14 areas of the city that, and the Center for Close to Health Gap did a study about this, and with Councilmember Wendell Young. I think he actually led this group about where the food securities are, and there were like 12 to 14 sites, and I understand those still exist. That's something we have to address. There are some organizations that we funded. I'm drawing a blank on the name. There was one that's in the current ARP funding, and places like La Soup might be one of them. But really, what people need, grocery stores that they have access to. So in Avondale, for example, we did fund a grocery store that's going to be in the Avondale Town Center. Avondale hasn't had a grocery store for 12, 15 years. We've got a ton of fast food places, but actually no grocery store. And so, Westwood called us recently because the Save-A-Lot there closed. Madisonville, there was a Family Dollar store that they considered their grocery. And I thought, wow, that's kind of that's a Family Dollar stores are not groceries. I mean, I don't think there's any fresh produce in there, but they were saying it was convenient and you could get like food at least. I don't know what kind of food. I'm thinking I haven't, no offense to Family Dollar, you can get a lot of, laundry detergent and stuff like that there, but I don't think you can get healthy food there. But anyway, but there's another organization now that is trying to have a grocery store in Madisonville. And so we're trying to work with them. So that's, that is a big push to get access to healthy food. That just seems common. Another thing, I had a talk with a meeting with the Human Rights Campaign yesterday. And, one thing that we were talking about was, what about bathrooms for, transgender people? There was a study done. It said a lot of people who are transgender don't eat or drink before they go out because there are no single-use bathrooms to use. And so I looked around City Hall. I'm like, do we have any even in City Hall? And someone told me, oh, there's one. It's like on the first floor, way around the corner to the back. I'm like, I didn't even know that. So if I were a transgender person coming into City Hall, I wouldn't even know that bathroom was there. And so, maybe an ordinance to say, with like new construction, you have to include some single-use bathrooms, and maybe there's something we can do for like currently existing structures. So there are things that we need to do to just bring more equity to the city. We have a lot of good policies in place, but there's still some things we can work on. And sometimes it's a matter of, not just the policy, but pulling out, dusting off that policy and then saying, are we actually implementing this? Are we, putting the funds we need to actually make this happen? And so that is another issue. So I'm excited with the budget to actually look at some of those things that aren't being funded, which brings up the question that someone has in the chat about Zoom, that, to come in, I'm glad we have hybrid now. One thing about the pandemic is we realized you can be at work or at home, wherever you are, you can still come in and make public comment, which, didn't happen before. So now you can come in person, you can come on Zoom. Unfortunately, on Zoom, you have to sign up by 2:00 the business day before. So if you're coming into a Monday meeting, you need to sign up by Friday at 2:00. And some people don't even know what's happening on Monday until the weekend. Our agendas aren't always, up in a timely manner. And so the question in the chat is, is there something we can do to change that? So we're going to talk to the clerk of council's office to see if there's a better system we can have. Part of it is, they don't want to be hacked. And I guess this is the way they came up with a method of, I don't know how that helps, only because I'm not a tech person. I'm not saying it doesn't help. I'm just not a techie. But, Zoom hacking is like a thing, right? So people do that, and they're trying to make sure that doesn't happen at City Hall. But there's probably, a way that we can prevent that without telling people they have to sign up 24 hours in advance, because that's kind of a lot. So we're checking on it. We don't have an answer yet, but we're checking. And I don't tell the clerk of council how to do her job, but we'll just ask, is there a way we can do this? Because several people have asked us about that.
Well, we're reaching our close. Are there any other quick questions or comments from folks out there?
And I'll put my phone number in the chat box.
Okay.
Because when we get off, you might say, I want to call you and talk to you about this, which is great. I'll put my office number in and also my my cell phone. So the office is 352-5205 and my cell phone is 267-9474.
Any final comments or words from you, council member?
Well, just to say, community input is super important. I mean, we really, I hope that, it sounds like we didn't get a lot of feedback about it, but I'm hoping that what people saw with the American Rescue Plan Act, where we really reached out. We did a lot of town hall meetings and, getting on radio saying, call us, email us, let us know what you want. We try to pull all that together, surveys went out. We're really trying to find a way, and we can always do better, but we want to find a way to make sure there is community engagement, that people feel, I think before, I heard that people felt like City Hall wasn't really welcoming to them. I don't think that was on purpose. I don't know, wasn't there, but I always tell people City Hall is really your house. You can come in, you can come and comment. We're there working for you. When people call me up and say, I know you're really busy, and I just want to say, well, I'm busy working for you. We all are. That's why we're here. So never feel like we're too busy for you, because that's the reason we're here. So we really need to hear from our community. We need to hear what you want, your ideas. Someone called me today with an idea for jobs for youth. I thought that's a great idea. It's a great idea for a program. So we're always happy, and complaints as well. We've reorganized some things in City Hall. So now we have in our city manager's office, we have a constituent outreach person. So when people call us, you know, he's supposed to be able to connect us and connect our constituents to the right resources. We've taken those human services contracts out of the Department of Community and Economic Development. And now we have an attorney, Virginia Talent, who's over that. Because if anyone is here from any of those human services organizations and you still haven't gotten your funding that was promised about this time last year, those checks should now be on the way. It's been a really long, crazy year. And, you know, the funding source was from HUD dollars, which put an extra layer of, you know, red tape on, but, and it was nobody's fault in the administration, but this new office where Virginia Talent is solely focused on human services and the human services contract, I think is going to make that process so much better. So, so things are looking up, definitely looking up.
Well, good. We certainly appreciated you participating today, council member, and we will certainly have you back in the future.
Oh, someone just, Beth asked me about the gun range. Did you want me to say a few things about that? I know it's 103, but.
Yeah, Beth, what?
Yeah, so the gun, I'll make this last comment about the gun range. You're not going to hear me saying a lot about the gun range because, you know, I really, so, you know, I'm the city council person who's really working on that. You know, we need to move out of Lincoln Heights. It's actually in Avondale, but it abuts Lincoln Heights and Woodlawn. So, you know, we definitely need to move, and we've looked at a lot of different sites for it. I think we have found one that really is going to work for us. We're looking to see how much it's going to cost. Really happy that the county allocated some funds for it. You know, hope the city will as well. But, you know, I should say, as I tell Chief Isaac, nothing happens until he says it's okay. He is not against moving. He just, you know, he wants us to let him know what's the cost going to be, and can we get for the Cincinnati Police Department the same amenities that they have now where they currently are. So whereas in the past, my understanding from years ago is that there was a lot of pushback about moving, and you know, CPD didn't want to move, maybe council didn't want to move. We don't have anyone saying don't move. You know, we're trying to move to a place where there isn't a community that's built up close to the gun range. So there's some space between the gun range and where the residents live. And so we've looked at different sites like that. So we're making a lot of progress. I just haven't said much about it because I want the chief to have all the information he needs. You know, he's really, you know, the boss in this case. And, you know, I'm not overstepping his authority at all. I have total respect for him. And so, but, you know, he is working with us, and, you know, we are moving forward. So it's, you know, it's kind of a slow process because you have to, one, find the site, and then you have to see how much it's going to cost. And then you have to find funding. And we have bipartisan support from Congress. You know, we've got Senator Sherrod Brown's office and Senator Rob Portman's office, and they're both working with us. County commissioners are working with us. We've got a lot of support for this. So we are moving forward, and, you know, happy that the county allocated some funds for that, and we'll be looking for other funds as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
We'll keep you updated on that as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for your participation, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you.
Bye-bye.